Nchang, you deserve to be here.
And he deserves you to be. Is that?
How have you been? How are you holding up?
Been good, really good. Taking good care of myself and making progress one day at a time.
How was your experience like at the African Leadership Academy?
It was full of growth. It was full of growth. I'd say that the only thing I will highlight, perhaps, or one of the main things I'll highlight about my time at ALA was simply the fact that it was a comfortable environment to fail. And I would say I made the most of that, or at least that was my goal. Realizing that if there's anywhere I can make some mistakes, that I can learn from, it's probably at ALA, because those mistakes would have been less tolerable, out in the real world. So you make them there and then you learn from there, such that by the time you're getting out, you're a better person. That's really what ALA was for me, a growth experience and a place to really try as much as possible. That was the theme of my experience at ALA.
So, speaking about trying and failing, what are some of the things that you failed that really transformed you into becoming the person you are today?
Oh, that is a good question. The things I failed at ALA, a lot of it had to do with, testing. Now, let's see, academics, certainly not one. I was really good at that. Interpersonal relationships, that was a huge one. Given diversity, exactly, you're dealing with people who come in with different, schools of thought about opinions, and highly opinionated people, right? Handling different backgrounds, different cultures, that environment. I would say the failure there was really more like, what are some of the things I did? We worked on a project with Changs together. We were in the same student enterprise in our second year. So as you imagine, a lot of it wasn't really failing per se. It was more like, what didn't go well and what did we learn about our process in this attempt? Why did we think about it, right? And if it didn't go well, okay, good. Now we know what doesn't go well, but most so we understand the fundamental of why it didn't go well, or what we were trying to achieve that didn't succeed. Okay, now I know better, right? So now when we look at interpersonal relationships, very important thing is skills, managing people, management. And I ran Changs when I was at ALA. If you notice, in the second year, it was, I can't remember, what was the name of the company? Edgar and Abdullah. It wasn't like open market? I don't know. But, having a lot of the sales were now outsourced to them. That was a whole kind of relationship in itself. You learn new things from there. You learn what goes wrong, what didn't go wrong. But again, it was just the fact that if something could have gone wrong, the consequences would have been less severe compared to if they went wrong in the real world. So you take those lessons and you go, okay, now I need to know when to have the hard conversations. Now I need to know when to, be vulnerable, or how to be, you really learn your own strengths and your own weaknesses, as I'd say.
Speaking about Nchang, it was actually one of the best ventures on campus, and it was really solving a huge problem. So did you always have an...
Oh no! I said I was saying, arguably I'm really happy the way Nchang turned out. Nchang was one of the many ideas I had at ALA, and ALA was just a really budding environment for, everywhere, at least for me, for the way in which I approach the world, the way in which I love solving problems. Every corner at ALA was an opportunity to solve a problem, and Nchang's was one of them, and that specific problem. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this one. And we did it, and I'm happy the way it turned out.
Post ALA, you're an alumni now. What are some of the problems that you have seen outside that you're currently addressing?
Oh my, that is a good one there. Are there really problems? Now I look at it more like value that we add. Now I look at it more like, you know, it's less of a problem and more like, where can we make things better? Where can we make things more inspiring? I'll give you an example, a very, top level, surface level, a high level example. During my gap year after ALA, I went to Bamenda, Cameroon, where I'm from, proudly so. And I happened to have met this amazing group without mentioning any names. So I met this, cooperative of coffee farmers, and they were doing quite impressively well. And they had their own challenges, but I was so appreciative of the fact that, hey, with some of what I've learned from ALA, now I know when you're having a conversation with people like this to ask the serious questions, the real questions, the tough questions, the ones that everyone else would probably not be asking. And then you do, and then you come to look at the business through different layers. And then I recalled that when I was in South Africa, doing chants, I ran into another guy, again, I won't call names, who happened to know a lot about making pretty much anything out of anything, right? So what we look at as a kitchen, that's his laboratory. He's an agronomist, he's a food scientist. There, that's the word. And he has pioneered some of the most remarkable brands in the world that we know of today. So I fortunately was able to, broker a partnership between these two entities to create coffee-based value-added products. And that turned out really well, So it's more like what's happening around, looking around oneself and going, where can I apply my skills to? Another problem I'm trying to solve right now is that of healthcare. Healthcare is tough and challenging, quite frankly, especially from someone who is approaching it from an economic standpoint, where you find yourself in a lot more moral dilemmas than you find actually solving the problem itself. Is we're on the cusp of, how can I put it? We have a lot of breakthrough innovations. We have so much new ideas out there which are, in the lab, which are being developed. A lot of new therapies, a lot of cures, a lot of all of these things which painfully will and may never make it to market, to the people who need it the most, simply because of the way our financial structures are built and designed. So my goal is to figure out, sickle cell in particular, something which I've had history with, something which, is very close and dear to my heart. How do we get the cure for sickle cell, something which is currently in development, and make it available and accessible to those who need it the most, where they are, at a cost they can afford? And how do we do that at scale, sustainably, right? So those are the kind of, is that a problem I'm solving? One can call it a problem, but hey, if this is all I can do in my lifetime, I'll call it a really good lifetime. But that's what I'm working on at the moment. Those are the kind of problems I want to solve, the kind of value in society, in, others' life that I want to create.
So when I asked you what problems you're solving, you said you don't see them as problems, really. You see them as value. Is this a mindset that you had before going to LA, or it was a mindset that you had developed post-LA?
This was before I went to ALA. What ALA did was just help me put, how can I call it? So that was the mindset. What ALA did was just help me, put a name on it, give a number to it, zoom in on the fact that, oh, this is something you may be particularly good at. That kind of, ALA gave it more context, more flavor, more how can I describe? Think of it like this probably not be the best example, but think of it like a sword, you know, a knife, a blade. You own the blade, it's yours, you already have it. ALA just helped me file it.
Most organizations, companies, or startups that entrepreneurs create, there's always a story behind it. Can you share your story behind Sickle Cell Foundation?
Yes, I can. Very briefly, the story starts from probably when I was born, because I was born with the disease. It's a blood type disease. So I had no control over that. I didn't contract it of sorts. And it's independent, which means that I had it, none of my siblings, no one in my family has it. It's genetics. You can read more about that. But so I was born with the disease, and essentially, you know, without going much into the science of it, it manifests itself in many, goodness Lord, how do I describe sickle cell? It manifests itself in some really torturing ways. You know, as a patient suffering from this disease, you experience a lot of pain. And the way in which I can describe that pain, I want to liken it to think of a 45-pound steel rod, you know, bashed against your knee. Think of falling down on concrete. Think of, you know, I don't know, hitting your bone against some really tough iron, and then sustain the pain for like 2 weeks of, you know, constant pain. It's maddening. You cannot sleep, your head is dry, you're frustrated, you're in pain, there are no tears left to cry, you're cranky, you're all the attitude in the world is, you are just, it's a lot you're enduring when you go through a crisis. And you know, sickle cell by nature means that the body doesn't produce healthy red blood cells. And if the body doesn't produce healthy red blood cells, that means adequate food and water is not, you know, adequately transported to the parts of the body that needs it the most, and the organs, and those get damaged. Livers, kidneys, spleens, even the bones, cartilage doesn't form very well. So hip replacement is very common amongst the sickle cell patients. Strokes, both silent strokes, and you know, it's priapism. I can go on and on. Stiff necks, and yeah, you can read the rest on the internet. But that's what going through sickle cell is like. And so you have something like these, you know, 4, 5, 6 times a year. And when I mean 4, 5, 6 times a year, it's literally the year, because it's when you start experiencing the symptoms, that's like 2 weeks of just the pain, and then another 2 weeks of recovery. So that's a month which you've lost. And then have that, you know, done 4 or 5 times in a year, you've almost not gone to school. That was a lot of my reality. But 2016, I had a bone marrow transplant. I was blessed, fortunate, and it itself was a miracle. My older brother was 100% match, and so we did the transplant. It was successful. I still lived with a lot of the symptoms of the chemotherapy, because it's a lot of chemotherapy which is administered. And the only lasting side effect I have perhaps are my eyes. So my eyes don't produce tears, and I have to use eye drops to lubricate them every so often. Other than that, you know, I'm doing well. I'm living the most. My health has been the best it's ever been. I now play intramural soccer. I know you used to play a lot of soccer, so I've been hitting some assists. Not yet. I haven't gotten some goals yet, but I have those assists in. You know, academically, I'm just crushing it. Quite frankly, I don't know how else to say it. My academics are strong, and I'm really grateful for that. The fact that, you know, I can show up to class, record 100% class attendance, you know, be very effective with my time, do the things I enjoy doing. So yes, that's been a deeper dive into my history with sickle cell, but there you go. That's why this is close to my heart.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. And I think we are really fortunate to have you also helping address this problem.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
While you're trying to address these problems, what are some of the things that you have learned along the way?
Lessons I've learned, quite frankly, are not too different from the lessons which everyone that has gone through this route will share. You know, you learn not to take things personal. You learn because you'll get a lot of no's or disappointments or oops. You learn how to. I think one thing which is actually important is that you learn. There's a word I'm looking for. Discernment, is that the word? But it's a certain kind of wisdom of timing. You know, when to be aggressive and when to not, when to be fast and when to be slow, when to send that follow-up email and when to just hold it out a little bit. In the course of all of this, you really learn pacing. That's the word. You learn how to pace yourself. And you realize that, again, remember that this is life, right? It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. If you're gonna run kilometers upon kilometers, you can't just be jetting off. You know, you learn to manage your energy, to conserve your time. You learn to invest in the things which make you happy. I saw the podcast which you did with Vusi. There's a point I'm going to hammer in, which was you learn to be very careful about what you let in terms of the media you consume, in terms of the books you read, the movies you watch. I can't overemphasize this enough. You probably did even better than I am, but it does have an impact on you. It does have an effect on you. It tremendously, in ways you do not know, affects the kind of decisions you make, etc. So being very conscious about those you keep around yourself, those you keep around you, and the kind of literature you engage in, you know, it should be one which grows and nurtures you and fosters you to just be a better person and also better in the domain which you're heading. So those are the lessons which I have learned in the course of doing what I do.
Nchang, thank you for sharing your story.